Hey everybody, welcome. We are so excited to have you here. My name's Riggs Kay, and today we're going to give you an overview of our new creator tool, IMVU Studio. We also want to show you some of the cool new IMVU Studio features like creating dynamic shine. And in addition, our experts will introduce a brand new Easter egg, actually some Easter eggs, which are surprise features that are soon to be released. Very exciting. And last but not least, we will answer your questions via our Q&A feature. Please use the Q&A feature to answer questions, and remember to keep your questions on topic and GA friendly. We decided to use the QA feature instead of chat because it just helps us keep things more organized. If you haven't downloaded the latest IMVU Studio product, you can find it here. I'm just going to put this in our little chat feature so you can check it out in case you haven't tried IMVU Studio yet. There it is. We will be recording this webinar so that creators who are unable to attend the live session can view it later. All right, now that we've got all the housekeeping taken care of, let's introduce our experts, Angel's Kiss 2007, Drosselmeyer, and Tauntaun Tonic. Angel's Kiss 2007 is a longtime IMVU creator who will be demoing for us today. Welcome, Angel's Kiss.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So excited to have you here. You're going to be demoing all the ins and outs of IMVU Studio, which is going to be very cool. Drosselmeyer is IMVU's digital artist focused on IMVU Studio, and we're so glad to have you here today, Drosselmeyer.
Yeah, hi, nice to be here. Great to be with everyone and participate in this learning session.
Yeah, for sure. And last but not least, here is the guy who manages everything having to do with IMVU Studio, Tauntaun Tonic. Great to see you again, Tauntaun.
Hey, everybody. Really excited to show everyone some new features that will be coming very soon in IMVU Studio.
Awesome. All right, now Angel's Kiss 2007 is going to take it away and give you an overview of IMVU Studio. All right.
Awesome, thank you. Let me just share my screen here for you guys.
Okay. And if you need to have me stop share, oh, there you go.
Nope.
You got it.
Everyone should be all set. Hopefully you can see my IMVU Studio homepage, and we're going to take a tour of it. So just as Riggs had said, I'm Angel's Kiss 2007, or Kendra, and I've been on IMVU since, I don't know if it's obvious, but 2007. And I've really enjoyed being able to help test the beta, and I'm really excited to get to show you guys these new features. So we're going to take a look at a lot of them now, including the new interface, adding textures and mesh materials, the new normal and shininess maps that Riggs told you about, and the new ways to find products in your shop, as well as derivables in the main shop. So first, let's take a look at the new design. The key change from the former creator tool is that it is separate from the main application, but there are still tons of features that you have access to. Your homepage, which we can see here, will allow you to take a look at your inventory and draft products, easily broken up into a few sections. So drafts, as you see here, are products that you're working on locally on your computer, but you haven't submitted them to the shop yet. The submitted section has gone into the shop, but has not been put into peer review. So you haven't clicked that submit to shop, or the submit to peer review button. And then we've got a little section for anything that's currently in peer review. And lastly, published. So everything else in your catalog that you've ever worked on, you'll find it here. If you're like me, this goes on for a very long time. But thankfully, because of the new layout, you can search for your existing products. So if you want to look for that base that you need to make a change to, you can click, use keywords, and your catalog and all of the topics are going to automatically search for you. You can also use the category topics on the left to narrow those down as well. So that's the new home interface. And then from there, you can get started creating. And just as a quick note too, on any of these products that you either want to make an edit to or continue working on, you just hover over it and click edit. So super easy. To get started, you can either click the create button here in the corner or this little plus sign. So when you hit create, you're going to go to the new derivable shop. So This is every product in the catalog that is marked as derivable, which can be a little overwhelming. But there are some tools that are going to make this really easy to work with. So first, just like we have on our homepage, you can actually search for products by keyword here. So you want to look for a vase. Cool. This isn't a vase. Oh, that's because I'm in men's. Sorry, guys. I was using the categorize feature before. So as you can see, I'm in men's clothing. That's not exactly a good keyword for that, but let's try hoodie. And now you'll see there's tons and tons of hoodies to choose from. Now, as you're all probably aware, the derivation chain is so helpful when trying to find products. And what they've done is actually integrated that right into this interface. So when you click on any product, you can see the chain and you can make an informed decision about which product you want to derive from. Sometimes people leave the derivable button on when it might not necessarily be appropriate. So you can actually go back in the chain and find the right one to work with. For example, here, we can see that this oversized coat is the original mesh, and we're going to work off that, which gives us a smaller file size as well as a better price in our catalog. So when you're ready, you just click Derive to get started. I have a couple products here that I've started with, so we'll take a look at those. So let's take a look at the creating interface now. 1 second while I get back to my... All right, so this is the new creator interface, and a lot of the materials and tools you're used to are still here, just in slightly different spots and a lot more icons. So in the top left, you're going to see the import button to import your new materials if you're a mesher. You've got your tools that are super helpful, like the minimum coverage guideline and pose here. This button is the same as the high-res no background screenshot we used to use. So it's simply just click a button and it will take it and save it to your computer. And then this is the decoration mode, which is the ability to, put in products in your rooms to be able to interact with, especially if it's really useful if you're a room or a furniture mesher. As a reminder, just like in the old tool, if you work in decoration mode while you're in preview mode, that doesn't save anywhere. So it's not affecting the room and furniture layouts that you would interact with normally. So next is the component and the assets columns. So these are all here. Assets is all of the files that you have in your that you've imported into your project so far. If you actually pull this over, there is more data that you can see fully, which is really helpful. So you can see all of the pieces you've added, and you can see if you're using them or not. So you can see here, we've got a couple of pieces that I'm not going to be using anymore, and you can simply delete them if you're not going to use them anymore, or you can rename them, whatever makes it easier for you to work on your project. And then the component tab is the one you're going to be using the most often. So again, you can size this up however you'd like. And this is really used in conjunction with this inspector column here on the right. So the first icon over here is materials. Everyone's going to be working with materials. This is new in Studio, is the ability to rename and more carefully ID your materials, which is great. If you remember in the old tool, they had the material numbers like 1, 2, 3. We all got really used to that, but now we can be extremely exact. So you can see here, I've labeled this as the body front, the sleeves, the back, like no more guessing anymore, which is really nice. And then imported meshes will start with a label called new material. So you will have to identify those, and then you can click to rename them as soon as you've found that. And it's really easy. You just double click it and type and you're done. So when you click on that material, the inspector tab on the right will update to show you all the information about that material. We're going to take a look at this more in depth in just a minute. And then the next icon on the left is mesh. So when creating meshes, this is a spot where you can also override part IDs in a couple different varieties. And then, for example, so this one here, I added the XMF file directly over here. You can add new ones. You can add a completely new mesh ID. So if you wanted to add a layerable portion to this, you just pick a custom ID and then you load in your XMF file just like you would. And the nice thing you'll see here too is the master parent mesh ID, and then you can override. So if this is, you know, also supposed to take over a few more pieces, you can override that there. And then you can identify the mesh IDs like we used to have before, MO1, MO2, and you can also rename them here. So, and pick an uploaded material. So very interesting. That part I've noticed a significant change, and it's really helpful for meshers. And then moving away from that, the last panels are the action panel. So if you have animated products, and then the particle tab. So that's a lot over there in that tab. And then now we're going to go back and take a look at this inspector panel and the materials and how we're going to use that. So lots of controls here, many of which are from the former tool, but laid out a little differently and some have different names. So first you'll see that there are now 4 texture slots. The first 2 you're used to. Diffuse is your visible texture, and opacity is for hiding and revealing parts of the material. But new to the tool are normal maps and shininess maps. I've actually got a product up here too that's going to better show these off for us. So normal maps are best described as creating texturized surfaces, like being able to make something that would normally feel bumpy get an actually bumpy surface. And then shininess maps are used to define areas on the product that would reflect brighter when light is hitting it. So looking at this vase, we can see that there's a texture created. And as we move it around, you can see the reflection of the light on the vase from the room. So there's like 3-point lighting in some rooms, single point lighting in others. All of these surfaces that use these maps are going to react to that light. And then you can actually adjust how reflective it is. So right now, this is actually the default like lowest setting, and there's always going to be a small amount of shine when you use a shininess map, and then you can really blare that up. So if you want to make something even more reflective, you can just use the slider to make that even more intense, which is super neat. So from items that are going to use opacity, you're going to see another interesting change in tools. So going over to one of these little test flowers I've got on here, you'll see transparency mode is a new dropdown. So in the former tool, this was simplified to the little blending checkbox. So blending checked was softer lines and it allowed for partial opacity, and blending unchecked is the harder lines and only allowed for black and white in your opacity maps. So in this tool, those are now labeled as composite blend, which is the equivalent of your blending being on. And alpha test is also similar in this regard. And then blending unchecked is now known as, oh no, I'm sorry. Alpha test is the equivalent of blending being off. So this is the like little harder lines and a lot easier, crisper, and then that's really nice. And then what you can do here when you're in alpha test is you can actually modify the threshold. So when you're working with something and you need it to be a little more crisp, you see here that I've got a little bit of a black outline on my flowers. If I modify this threshold up or down, depending on what I need, I can actually bring that in a little bit and soften it up. So very useful. When shininess is in use, you're going to have that reflective slider we talked about. And when you're using shininess on a texture that's also using an opacity, so let's pretend for a second and add a thing here. You're going to see a little ... menu appears. Let's preview it first. This advanced, oh, I'm sorry. I think it has to be in composite blend mode. Okay, yes. And when it's in composite blend mode, you hit this advanced feature that you can actually turn off this reflection choice. What this does, it's kind of a fix to an interesting bug that was noticed where if you use opacity and shininess, anywhere on the map that was hidden would still glow. So this is what that is a fix for. So Just keep that in mind. It's a little bit of a, I don't think a lot of people will come across that, but there is a fix for that. And then lastly, that's pretty much it for these new maps. They're really awesome, really, really valuable. And then going down the list, there are more settings that we're really used to. So double-sided is what used to be called two-sided, that checkbox. It makes your texture render from both directions, which is really valuable for items like clothing, but can be useful to leave off for things like rooms or windows so that you can see it from one direction and not from another. Cast shadows is new and does exactly as it sounds, as does receive shadows, ignore fog, and overwritable. And those are all, cast shadows and receive shadows, as well as subsurface shading, are all features that are still in development, but they are really interesting. And then ignore fog is just as it sounds like. And there's a lot of tool tips which will help you if you have questions on some of these. Self-illuminate existed, and that's the one where it has its own light source. It does not need to, it doesn't pay attention to your room's light source. And then skin composite, you don't normally use this very often unless you're working on clothing products, but that's where the layer that is on the skin, you have to turn that on so that when you, make some parts disappear, that you're not completely see-through. You want your skin to show underneath that. Overwritable is exactly as it sounds. And then vertex color is an existing feature as well. Lastly on this list, we're going to see the texture animation option, which you can open up and get the same texture features just like you had before for animation. So cycling speed, the direction, and then on the bottom here, there's an overlay that no matter where you are in this list, you'll see the ability to test trigger actions. So let's go over here to a person that actually could do an action. You'll see some optional poses, or you can actually use triggers in your product if they exist. And then there's also a help and resources button here where you can report feedback and go to the discussion forums. So I know that's a lot and we're almost done. So let's take a look at the inventory tab. This is extremely useful and helpful for when you're working on any kind of product. So you can adjust your avatar and scene by going through this inventory tab. When you go over here, you're going to see a little filter your inventory that pops up, and you can, it's just as it sounds, you can see what you're wearing now. So you could remove something if you need to take it off. You can go through your products and search, or go by category to find new products to add or remove to your avatar, including rooms and furniture. Something that you might have noticed as well is that your avatar also loads in with your current outfit, as opposed to the former tool always loading with that default super outdated looking avatar. And this is super helpful, at least for me, which just saves you time and energy. But do remember that it's really beneficial to test your products with other products in your inventory, just to see if you might have any compatibility issues to work through. So lastly, on any product, we have the info tab. So this is where you see all of the information about your product. Formerly, most of these settings were in that submit panel on the tool. So you name your product, you put your thumbnail. This is new, so it doesn't have a product ID, but if you were editing something, you would see the ID here. You've got your type, your rating, the category, and compatibility, if you're not familiar, is what avatar base. 80 is female, 191 is male, and some products can be unisex, which have an 80, 191. So super interesting stuff if you're not really familiar with making things that way. The body parts that you're using in this product are also listed here. And then you can see more information, including your final size of the product you're about to upload. Lastly, you've got your regular stuff again for the submitted tab that you would see. You put your profit, you get to see your fees and the markup and the total price, as well as put your keywords and your controls. So this one is a new mesh that I'm going to upload in a moment. So let's take a quick look at how we can actually apply textures. So I've pre-created my textures here, but what's really cool is you can upload all your things into a project and you'll see them all listed here. So it's really easy to just switch your materials around. So we're going to add in these materials right here. Otherwise, you can hit add image and you can load it in from your computer, obviously. And we're going to put our sleeves on. We're going to put in our back. And we're going to put in our hoodie. So the last 3 buttons you'll see are up here at the top. So preview, as you've seen me kind of click here and there, is how you can update your view of your product as you've made changes to your assets. So this takes no time at all, and you can now see the materials applied. And we're going to hit save, just so that just saves it locally to your computer. It does not save it to the server unless you're editing a project that's already uploaded. Actually, that might not be true. I think it's just locally to your computer, sorry. And then lastly is the submit button. So I have you're gonna wanna make sure your info panel is completely filled out. Then I'm gonna hit submit and I'm going to submit it into the shop. It takes just a moment and then it's gonna tell you that you have a product ID and to click it and go to the product page. Let's give it a moment to do that. Just one more moment. All right, it was successful, and clicking OK is going to open up our product page. And then from there, you all know the drill. I'm going to add in my HTML description quickly, and I'm going to submit it to peer review. And so that's it for the walkthrough on the new interface and how to submit an item to the shop. I hope this was helpful, and be sure to keep checking back for more updates and features as IMVU continues to optimize the new Studio tool.
Thank you so much, Angel's Kiss, for that comprehensive review of IMVU Studio and all of the exciting new features it offers. Now we are going to go for a couple of fun surprises. They are Easter eggs, and we're going to have Tonic explain what all of that means.
Easter eggs, huh?
Yeah.
Kind of like at the end of a movie Easter egg.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is exactly what I'm going to show everyone. I figured that we're very, very close to releasing a new version of IMVU Studio Beta, or the next release version. We're only about a week away. And so I thought I would show everyone some new features that are going to be in the next release, as well as some new features that will be in the release right after that. So there's two new features that will be released in about a week. And the first one has to do with the pop-up panels that appear all over the place in IMVU Studio. This is a sort of a new type of interface that we were experimenting with for quite a long time. And in a couple versions ago, you could actually click on any of these pop-up panels and they would all stay up at the same time. Well, we got a lot of complaints from a lot of users saying that, I'm constantly trying to close all of these pop-up windows. So in the last version, we got rid of that, and now you can only have one pop-up panel open at a time. Well, right after we did that, we actually got a lot of complaints from people saying like, oh my gosh, I really miss having being able to have lots of panels up at the same time. So we made a couple changes, and now we added a little pin to the top bar on the user interface. So if you're working on a product, for instance, and let's say, you are constantly updating your diffuse and your opacity map, you can pin both of these and put them anywhere you want on your interface, and they'll stay up so that you can you can iterate and have those texture maps open all the time. They'll stay open no matter what component you look at. If I'm editing something, something over here, I can open up color panels, and these will stay open as long as they're pinned. And then you can do that with anything at all. So if I, for instance, wanted to keep this color map open as well, no matter where I go, it'll stay pinned. So we're getting to the point where we're going to allow you to start customizing, your interface a little bit more. And so we hope that this helps for people that want these pop-up panels to go away, and as well as for the people that would like a few pop-up panels to stay open as they're working. So that's one new feature that's coming in about a week. The second new feature that I'm really excited about, that a lot of people have been asking for, is the ability to set a default room so that whenever I start a new project, there will be a specific room that I like working against. So there's two places that you'll be able to get to this from. If you go into your preferences, there's a new setting here called default room. Any room that you own will show up in this panel, and you can select any room you wish as your background room. So the next time you start a new default or start a new draft project, or the next time you derive from a product, it will open up that particular room. The first two selections are always going to be the standard preview room light and preview room dark, which is the same rooms that you'll see on IMVU Desktop and IMVU Mobile. The second way that you can select a default room is directly from the inventory panel. So if I go to my filters and select rooms, it shows up with all my rooms. If I see a room here that I just want to have as my default room, I can select the little three dots here and just say make the global default. So now from now on, that'll be the room that I start with. Also, and sort of a bit of a side feature, if I just decide to load a specific room without making it my global default room for this particular draft project, the next time I close this project and then open it again, this is the room that it'll load. So it's going to save locally the room that you want to use, even if it's not your global default. So two little features that I hope will help out a lot for everyone. Now, coming out not in the next version next week, but a few weeks after that with our .35 release, we are going to be releasing Particle System 2.0. Now, there are two features, both particle systems and mesh scaling, that in the old client were never really released to the public. We experimented with them, and then in the ensuing years, lots of people really figured out how to use the debug mode in the old creator tool and actually make particle systems. So we just left it in there. But that was the only way that you were able to make a particle system in the past. There was no user interface, and you had to actually use the debug mode and know how to do a little bit of light programming in order to get particle systems to work properly. But now we've actually, for particle systems, we've added a whole user interface and made a bunch of improvements to particle systems for IMVU Studio and mobile and desktop. And one of the biggest features that a lot of people have been clamoring for is the ability for particles to exist in world space. And what I mean by that is, if you notice, I have a little particle system here that's emanating from the back of her wrist. And the only thing I have going is they fade out and they have a little bit of negative gravity, so they float up, and that's it. And in the old create mode, if you made a particle system like this, those floating particles would stay around her arm no matter what. But now, let's say I add a dance move to this avatar, you'll notice that the particles stay in world space. And so you can get some really amazing streaming effects from the new particle system. And I created this really quickly. It really didn't take me long at all. So all your products, you can just let your imagination run wild and add particle systems to your products. The other new feature in the particle system itself is the ability to have a lot of control over the particle system over time. So from when the particle system starts to when the particle system ends, within that, I can add keyframes and I can change the color, I can change the scale, I can rotate the particles over time, and I can make adjustments to all these right in this panel here. You can add as many keyframes as you want into this evolution section. And then the last thing in particle systems, here's a nice little bubble particles. And if you notice, the bubbles aren't just going straight up as they emanate from the pool. They're actually making a little bit of random movements here or there, up and down, kind of like bubbles do as they get pushed around in the air. So you have a lot of control over that now. In this section here, there's an advanced evolution section, and you can add random elements, random acceleration, and random displacement. So with random acceleration, for example, every frame that these particles are animating, it's pushing it in a random direction. So you get kind of a nice little bubble effect. Very, very simple, but you could probably mess around this for ages and come up with lots and lots of different systems that that I couldn't even think of. So that's what's new in particle systems. So the very last thing that's coming in the release after next is the ability to do mesh scaling. And I'm just going to go to just a standard t-shirt and derive from it. So if you are creating a product that uses a human mesh, or I'm sorry, a human skeleton, you'll get this extra feature down here, and you'll have access to scalars. This is, again, another feature that was only available in debug, and we, in the new IMVU Studio, we have applied a user interface to it. So now any of your products could contain a bone scaling if you wish. And I'm just as a quick example, you add a bone scale, you select what bone you want to scale. Just for the sake of example, I'm going to choose the head because it's really obvious. You scale that on any of your 3 axes and press preview, and there you go. It looks a little bit like the old avatars from 2005.
Don't give anyone any ideas, Tom.
Right. So I'm going to put that back. So those, I think that's the end of my list. Those are all the new features that are coming fairly soon. And we can't wait to get this out to everyone. We have a lot of other features that are coming down the pike in IMVU Studio. Remember, we're still in beta. We're listening to everyone's requests, and we're adding features as fast as we can. Our goal is eventually to get to the point where all the features that were in the old creator tool and more are available in IMVU Studio, and we're not going to stop until we reach that goal. And who am I handing things off to next?
That's to me. Thank you.
Back to you, Riggs.
Back to me,
Awesome.
Riggs. That's right. Thank you so much, Tonic. I am personally very excited about the new pop-up panels and the particle effects and the scaling. It all looks amazing to me.
Awesome. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Yeah. All right. Now for the fun part, the Q&A. We are going to take your questions, and Tonic, Drosselmeyer, and Angel's Kiss are going to answer them. So remember to use the Q&A feature and just type in your question, and we will look them over and either answer them by typing them in or answering them verbally. We've got, and if you go to Q&A, you'll see that a lot of your questions have been answered already. So I'm going to let you guys.
I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah, and I have a few that I have some examples that I've created for as well.
Oh,
to
excellent.
help illustrate some answers where we can. Where would you guys like to start? Would it be easier to read them out loud and then whoever wants to address it can address it?
Well, I marked a few as answer live, and I saw that you did too, Kendra. So there was one, though, that was something that just came up about the bubbles Tauntaun was talking about. And it looks like Anonymous asked if the bubbles would be able to be seen in the IMVU client. And I think you, correct me if I'm wrong, Tauntaun, but if you make particles in Studio, they will be visible in the client, but you won't be able to edit them. Is that correct?
Close, but the new particle system is a brand new particle system, and it will only particles that you make in IMVU Studio will only be visible in desktop or mobile. All of the new devices. The old client, the product that you make will still work, but the particle system itself you won't see in the old client. Like I said, it's a new particle system. It takes advantages of a lot of the features of the new game engine, and so it's not something that we were able to make backward compatible.
Okay. Where do you want to go from here? Do you want to start going down the list?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so I have one from Brittany Tracy. This, she wants to know, will there be a separate download or a whole new app? So Studio is its own separate app that's a separate download. So the two new products are the desktop client and then Studio, but they're downloaded separately. So unlike the classic client where it was all one app, these are separate apps.
And
Hope
then
that answers questions.
yeah, and a similar question actually came up, which I think would be a great time to ask this as well. So folks are wondering how long the creator tool that exists and that client will still be available.
Yeah, so I was gonna take that one. I saw one of the anonymous attendees ask that question. We are going to keep the old create mode and the old client around for as long as we can. We have a lot of facts and Q&As about this, but as everyone is well aware, as far as the Mac operating system, the latest version of the Mac operating system is no longer supporting 32-bit apps. And our old client, which is about 15, 16 years old now, is a 32-bit app. Now, luckily, 32-bit apps still work on Windows platforms, and we're going to keep it around for as long as Windows is willing to support it. But that is actually one of the reasons, and it's sort of put a fire on us, under us, why we want to continue to quickly and robustly develop the new creator tools, IMVU Studio, as well as like the new desktop and mobile, because we know that there's going to be a day when Windows is going to say we're not supporting 32-bit apps anymore. They've scared us a couple times, but it looks like they're going to be supporting it at least probably for the next year. But it's kind of unknown. Whatever Bill Gates feels like he wants to do in the future. So yeah, in short, it's supported for now as long as Windows will be supporting it. And okay, yeah, I'm gonna continue going down the list here. Are there any other questions that anyone has earmarked that they'd like to answer?
I mean, there's a whole long list we can go through. So
Okay.
I think the next one at the top is something that I can help answer. And Greg, if you have some more technical behind the scenes answers to layerable
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
But this question from Dark Evidence is about how to make layerable clothing in Studio, which is something we could do before. So I want to just take a second and I can show you that that is still the case and hasn't really changed all that much. So
Excellent.
I have an example here. Just as if you're always working with layerable clothing, you are always, oh, 1 second, I have to click the share button. Now you should see my screen.
There we go.
And so layerable is always a very tricky subject, and it works best when you have a lot of meshes that you've worked with and you know they work together, but anything can technically be made layerable. And so the trick to that is, in this case, I'm making a brand new product. So you can see I'm going to add a mesh ID that is higher than the normal 0 through 9. There are plenty of recommendations for, which numbers you should use. I'm going to use 60 and I'm going to hit add. And then I'm going to add the asset of a cropped hoodie. So I'm actually going to be able to preview that now. And you'll see that this cropped hoodie is going to go over the outfit I'm already wearing. So that is something we used to do before, and you would just add a new mesh, a material ID of whatever you wanted, and you would add your XMF file. If you're taking an existing product and you want to make it layerable, similarly, you would remove the existing mesh. So say it was on 2, you would add a new mesh ID and you would reselect the mesh. There's a whole tutorial on how to do this in the classic client on the discussion forums, but it translates pretty well, and I'll put it as an earmark to make a new version for Studio as well. So that still exists.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to that, I actually answered a couple questions about this already. We are working on a whole new set of tutorials that are centered around using Studio. And so we're going through all the tutorials that we have that are in Classic, and we're going to be updating those for Studio. And that's something that's an ongoing project right now.
Awesome. And then it said, how does the new blending work? I don't believe any of the features are really new for blending, other than a couple overrides and some better flexibility, but they are mostly the same as they were before. I think the biggest change for that is the ability on alpha test to be more precise. So you can actually choose, if you're using alpha test, you can make it so that your map is more direct. Like how much, like we did before, where we can remove this black outline by doing that. Is there anything else to add for that on blending, would you say?
The only other thing I can think of is the transparency priority order override.
Yes.
This is mainly applicable for rooms, but it could also be useful for somebody who's doing layered clothing, potentially.
Yes, and that one's a little complicated, but there is a bug that can happen. Well, not a bug, but just a rendering issue where sometimes your things won't appear the way you expect them to. They might get blocked by one thing or another. And that, as he's mentioning here, is the advanced transparency menu, where you can, when you're in, I think it's composite blending, right?
Yeah.
You can actually create a priority. There's going to be a way more in-depth tutorial on that because it's pretty complicated to kind of keep running in your head. But yes, lots of new tools to fix and adjust more appropriately, but all the same tools as before. Rachel, I'll give you back the screen now.
Thank you.
And I'm trying to keep up with the questions.
Yeah.
Let's see. There was another one. Oh, a quick and easy question. So how many keywords are we allowed?
Yeah,
that hasn't changed so far. It's still 12, correct?
As far as I know, it is. Brian,
and same with like character name, like how long your product title can be, stuff like that. Hasn't.
Yeah, so keywords specifically, and a single keyword can be up to 30 characters. And then if you separate all your keywords, in the info panel in IMVU Studio, if you separate all your keywords with commas, I think you can put in as many keywords as you want.
Well, up to 12.
Up to 12 keywords, yes.
Yes. Another quick
Not
and
1,000.
We wish. Though I sometimes struggle just coming up with 12. So so another good question that came up was, how do you download the outlines and the formats for like clothing and stuff to add to your design? And now this is a very good question. These are not available from the project itself. And that's Tonton, I'll have you correct me if I'm being a little off on that, but it's a security measure, right? For any creators, we don't want those materials to be just scrapable from the client. Like you don't. So what normally happens is a creator will, on the product page, allow people to download their texture. So usually you'll see texture maps. Sometimes you'll even get shininess maps, all sorts of useful materials on the creator's page for that product.
That's correct. The only time that you will see all of the texture maps that make up all of the derivables of a product downloaded to your desktop or downloaded to your computer are if you created them. Right. If not, you won't see those textures locally, and that's that's just to protect the work of our creator community.
Awesome. Another quick, easy question. Will there be a camera added to take pictures for product ads? Yes. I can share my screen again if you want to point it out. Otherwise, there'll be plenty of materials to show, but it's just right up in the top left corner is a little camera icon, and it does exactly like the high res no background would do. Actually, does it take a background?
So actually, there's two ways that you can do it. The asterisk high res no BG, just like you could in old create mode. If you type that into the little chat box in the bottom right corner, it will take a no background high resolution snapshot. And the icon up at the top left that you pointed out earlier, that will take a snapshot with the background.
Perfect. Yes.
We're gonna end up making that. Yeah, we're gonna end up adding the high res no BG to the little icon in the top just to make it easier. But for right now, at least you have the shortcut to type it in. And actually, one thing that we didn't really advertise a whole lot, I think the old images that the old snapshots in the old creator tool are like 2K by 2K images, and we doubled that. So in IMVU Studio, it's a 4K by 4K image that gets snapshot. Just to give everyone a little bit more flexibility for when they're using snapshots for advertisements and stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's see, where are some other ones? Oh, another one that was identified. So Carla asks, is GIMP a good software to use for creating clothing? And that's a two-part question, depending on what you mean. GIMP, or sometimes known as GIMP, is a free, really great photo editing tool. It's almost exactly like Photoshop, just free, and has a little bit more of a learning curve sometimes. Like if you're really used to Photoshop, it can be a little bit of a, takes a second to see where the tools are here, but it's really useful. However, you use a product like that for creating textures. So that's how you can manipulate an existing product. 1 second, I'm gonna, Rachel, your slide would, oh, perfect. Okay. If you're looking for actually creating clothing fresh, like a completely new model, you want to make a new mesh product, you use a different program like 3ds Max, Blender for some things. Those are required for those kinds of creating products.
Right, and then a couple questions that we had answered in a text in the Q&A. There were some people that were asking, do we support XAF and XMF, which is the old Cal3D format, and do we support FBX file formats? And we do support both. You can get to those through the menu, the import selections in the menu in IMVU Studio, and then there's also the icon in the top left where it gives you selection to import assets, which are Cal3D format files, or you can import FBX.
And we are very grateful for that, because I have 10 years of meshes that I would like to not not lose.
Yeah. I mean, we very much would like to move towards an FBX only format, but we know that there is a large history of especially texture artists that have existing Cal3D format files that they use to start their products with. So we didn't want to lose that. So we have legacy support for that. There's one question from Dark Eminence early on, and I think I might have answered that when I did the demo. Let me share my screen real quick, if I could. And he was asking where to get to the trigger to be able to trigger actions, both when you're in a chat room on IMVU Desktop or when you're in IMVU Studio. And that's in the bottom right-hand side here, where you can select all of the default actions that come with the avatar. Well, I can't really smile, but as well as the trigger actions, actions that you're wearing. And so you can get that from here. And just as an example, you can also, at least in IMVU Studio, you can test to make sure that the name actually triggers the action, which it's not doing right now. I'm not sure why. I might be wearing something that might be overriding that. But anyways, that you get to that in the bottom right-hand corner, and that's in the same place in the chat window in IMVU Desktop. I hope that answered the question for you. Let's see, streaming down the list here. Anyone want to take the next one?
There are a couple that might be geared towards you guys in future future things, like will there be a possibility of adding motion physics to clothing?
Oh, that's a
yeah, I saw that. That's a great question.
I know, that person's really excited about the future.
Yeah, we've talked a lot internally about adding basically like a cloth simulation to clothing, and it's definitely a possibility. But there's one thing that this is more of a high level answer. We have to be very, very careful with, especially with the millions of products that use the existing architecture of IMVU. We have products that are made from amateur to expert level. A lot of those products sometimes aren't necessarily optimized to be really, really low polygon count, and that's okay, and that's part of the beauty of our creator community as it is. But when you have, let's say, 10 avatars in a room, and each of those avatars might be wearing a hair product that is 20 or 30,000 polygons, we have to make sure that we have compatibility even with slower machines to handle all of those products in a room together. Cloth simulation is really expensive processing wise, both for the graphics processor and for the CPU. And so we've been trying to figure out a way that, if it might be possible in the future, if we can find even, maybe a third party software that can do cloth simulation really cheaply, we'll think about it. But it's not really in the near term, milestones for us. But we'd love for it to be at some point.
Awesome. Has anyone else identified any questions that you want to add to?
Somebody else had asked about, I want to learn how to do DJ lights. And the thing that I was interested about that question is we know we have a large DJ community out there and they like to do DJing. And I think one of the features we're still working on implementing is sound. Is that correct? Sound is still coming. So if there are DJs out there, we kind of would like to know what your workflow is and how those things are set up in the old client, so that we make sure we get that right in the new client.
Would you like them to submit that maybe through the feedback or on the forums? Like, where's a good opportunity for them to reach out for you?
I think a good place to do that would be on the discussion forums, or there's also an email address that we can direct people to, which is Studio Beta. I'll put it in the chat.
Perfect.
Studio Beta at imvu.com.
And I think that answered the next question from an anonymous attendee. He was just wondering, is there a team that we can interact with? They asked. which we can interact for IMVU Desktop
Right.
beta as well. There is a discussion forum for IMVU Desktop, a separate discussion forum. I'm not sure if there's an email address for the desktop client yet. Does anyone know if there's a specific place? I think the best place would probably be the discussion forums for desktop beta, and I can put a link to that as well into the chat.
Awesome. I'm just looking through the rest of the questions. Terry asked, where do we find the downloads for the studio and the client? We have the link to the studio in the chat here for you, but you can also get to those on the website. Under downloads is where you can get the desktop app, and then I'm looking right now actually to see. I think you can only get to the beta download from that direct link, right, guys? Or is it from maybe from the creator dashboard?
No, only from the direct
Okay.
link on the create.imvu.com.
Okay, so the download for the new IMVU desktop application is on the download section on the regular homepage, and then yes, we've got the studio beta link for you in the chat. And then so I don't know if I understand that one enough. The question here, and we'll see if we can address it, is are there multiple options for creating different texture types within lighting on clothing in Studio? And the answer to that is probably yes. Between normal maps and shininess maps, you have so much more creativity that you can use with clothing. So, you know, most of us who've been having to do this for a long time are used to what's called baking your textures, which is where you fill in and create your own shadows and highlights. And so with the new shininess maps, you can actually create real spots that actually reflect, like, I can only imagine the amazing sequin outfits that are going to come out of this. And normal maps are quite the challenge to get you know, the understanding of how to use them the best. I haven't quite found them completely useful yet for clothing, but I'm also still working through that just like everyone else. But that gives you that texture, so you can make things that are textured that way too. So, and then you can combine them. So there's so many more options that these just going from 2 to 4 map types gives you. So hopefully you guys can discover even more ways to make some awesome products.
Yeah, I could give an example to that. I could share my screen again.
Sure.
And the example products that I was using for the particle system, this was actually one of the dress I'm wearing is from one of the contest winners back in December. But if you notice, the light is interacting off of her dress, and the texture on her dress is, you know, some parts of the texture map are reflective and parts are not. And that's achieved by the shininess map. And then the normal map, you know, the sort of like bumpiness of the texture, that's achieved by the normal map. And the light is interactive. So depending on the lighting in the room and where those lights are in the room, they'll be reflecting off of that surface differently. Also, I think another example, did I do it here? Yeah. So here, I mean, if you notice, this glass table actually interactively reflects light off of the table. So you can get some really nice glass effects by using the normal and shininess maps, but it's all about the texture maps that you're using on your products, as well as the lighting that has been set up in the room itself.
That's awesome. There's another question here that I'll share my screen to answer too. So the question here is, I really like to use triggered poses to take avatar like product pictures, and haven't been able to do that. That is still available. So especially when you're in the IMVU Studio, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can type them just like you're used to down here in that test triggers section. So you type it here and it will trigger the pose. You can also go here. If the first one is the solo stuff, you can go to your triggers and all of your available triggers will show here. So you'll see here that like all of those will still work for you. So that's how you'll do that.
Right, and poses, like still poses, are basically they're actions themselves. They're
exactly.
They're just one frame, right? One frame
exactly.
actions. Yeah.
Well, let's see. I know we're running out of time here.
There's one other question that I just saw here from an anonymous attendee. Will there be new texture sizes above 256 by 256? And the answer is yes, we're working on that. Two parts to that question, actually. The first part is we want to increase texture map sizes. And we're debating right now whether we're going to go to 1024 by 512, or if we're going to go to 1024 by 1024. Now, because you have 4 texture slots now, especially if you're going to add normal and shininess maps, you're going to hit that upper 2 megabyte limit of what a product, or how big a product can be pretty quickly. So along with that, in a future release, we're also going to relax that limit, but we're not going to do it for all products. I think we're going to be doing it by the type of product that you're creating. So for example, if you're creating a room, I think we're going to make that limit 6 megabytes for a room. For larger products like tops and bottoms and skins, I think we're going to go up to 3 or 4 megabytes. And then for smaller products like accessories or eyes, for instance, we're going to stay at the 2 megabyte limit. So those are coming. Be patient. We want to relax those limits, but we also don't want to break people's slower and older machines when we do that.
Hi, folks. It's Riggs K again. I think we might have to close things out, even though there are so many more questions to answer. But we can always share the information on our discussion forums and follow up in that way. And we're also going to offer this to people to listen to who weren't able to attend. And if things went a little fast for you, for those of you who are attending, you can listen to the whole thing again and stop it when you wanted to, take some time to digest the information. But anyway, thank you, Angels Kiss 2007 and Drosselmeyer and Tauntaun Tonic for sharing your time and expertise about IMVU Studio. So appreciate it. And thank you everyone for attending this learning session and asking such amazing questions. I've cataloged them all. So those who weren't answered, if we can answer them, we will at a later time. And we hope this was helpful for you, and we look forward to next time.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you for everybody for attending. I've got lots of great ideas for future tutorials. People brought up a lot of great topics that we could try and tackle in future learning sessions as well. So that's great. So if you have anything that you would like to hear about, please let us know about that as well. That'd be great.
Definitely. All right.
Yeah, thanks everyone. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sure was. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.